I want to introduce the next speaker, Fernando Iazeta, because he didn't deliver a paper during these days. He's from the University of Sao Paulo, and I was in Sao Paulo recently, and then and before we've had many stimulating discussions, and I think he will have some very interesting views to add. So I want to thank him personally, as he's come especially just for the roundtable today. So I'm going to get this started, and you can get started too, but you need to.
Okay, thank you, Lee. Okay, that's okay. Okay, thank you, Lee. I'm going to read a short text. I hope it's not too boring. But I'll introduce maybe following Raul's words, because I'm not showing it in the text, but I'd like to say that maybe it's a little bit focused on I wouldn't say Latin American perspective, but at least a non-European one. So, and the text is about two main points. One of them is related to the institutionalization of electroacoustic music, and the other one would be more related to like a side effect of this institutionalization and related to the polarization on a few subjects. So I start with the first aspect, and I will read it. The field has been closely related to technological aspects since its early days. Of course, I'm talking about the field of electroacoustic music. Polterberg books, Any Sound You Can Imagine, talks about the technique and technology in terms of the organization of material and social means employed for musical ends. The relationship between music and technology is not limited to the instruments, recording devices, and other machines, but it also includes social technologies, quote, in the form of discourses, institutions, practices, aesthetic, scientific, pedagogical, legal, or economic, that produce representations of music that have a concrete ideological or material effect on music making. Thus, the technological development of electroacoustic music is not only related to the electronic devices that are involved in its production, but also to the technological contexts and institutions that have supported its development. Since its beginning, when broadcasting facilities hosted the first studios in Paris and Cologne, the history of electroacoustic music has been strongly connected with different types of institutions. During the last 6 years, we saw the appearance of a number of research institutes, international and local conferences, new associations, art centers, and academic courses devoted to electroacoustic music. Most part of its repertoire has been composed or played with the support of these institutions. Also, these organizations have gathered composers and created an environment for criticism and reflection about electroacoustic music. Thus, it seems relevant to me that this institutional aspect should be taken into account here. It has played an important role in the defining and giving support to the establishment of the field in the last 5 or 6 decades. But nowadays, we can observe a change in this type of formal organization. The widespread access to music technology, the omnipresence of computer, and the dissemination of musical practices mediated by technology, they all have promoted the dispersion of institutional power. Today, the personal studio has replaced the facilities formerly only available in art centers, research institutes, or academic labs. Communities can be rapidly assembled around virtual tools on the internet without the interference of any formal organization. Networking enables anyone to share sound with other musicians, and alternative venues are presenting electroacoustic music to new audiences that were not used to this repertoire. So I think that decentralization is a key word here. Not only, of course, not only to electroacoustic music, but to contemporary arts in general. So then I move to the second point, which is exactly related to this polarization or centralization. Centralization occurs not only in an institutional level, but also in aesthetical one. For example, electroacoustic music has defined a more or less straightforward set of relevant compositional problems in different phases of its development. Just to mention a few, like the polarization between French musique concrète and German electronic music, the beginning of the 50s, the golden age of analog composition in the 70s, computer-aided composition in the end of 80s, real-time processing in the 90s, and so on. Most of these issues have found their appropriate place in specific conferences, festivals, and journals. This, of course, was of considerable importance for the consolidation of the field. More than that, it has created a sense of community, a common background for the development of artistic, academic, and scientific research. Yeah, but this centralization may also have some side effects. First, we should consider the cultural polarization exerted by large and powerful institutions in the determination of the mainstream of aesthetic and technological developments in the field. Most of these institutions are located in a few developed countries that will export their particular compositional and, I would say, technological views to the rest of the world. No doubt that the globalization is promoting the exchange between local and global aspects of culture, but still today there is a contrast between the conspicuous production of some countries in Europe and North America in relation to the local production made in other parts of the world, such as Latin America, Asia, Western Europe, and so on. This situation leads to a flow of centralization around which most of the stylistic, technological, and artistic values gravitate. As a consequence, we have a depreciation of local repertoire in favor of an ensemble of works that deal with more universal compositional values. The situation is intensified by the fact that most of the technological research and development related to electroacoustic music has been concentrated on a few research centers in Europe. So going to the conclusion, maybe putting more questions than answers, heritage is closely related to tradition, and tradition doesn't mean the conservation of what has been done in the past. On the contrary, tradition means to deliver cultural practice from generation to generation so that this practice can be reinvented in the future. So the future can only inherit cultural practice by reinventing what we are doing right now in the present. Today, electroacoustic music seems to be more and more supported by informal strategies than it used to be. New ways of articulation between music and technology are being produced, leading to the emergence of new genres and music forms. Part of this repertoire is sometimes more connected to other art forms like visual art, performing arts, etc. Some of these issues are constantly being addressed by arts that are not directly associated with the mainstream of electroacoustic music. Sound art, circuit bending, network performance, free improvisation, live coding, noise music are some of the artistic forms challenging traditional electroacoustic compositional models. For a long time, electronic sound technologies have been absorbed in different levels of pop music, for example. New fields of cultural production, such as game industry, film sound design, sound branding, ringtones for cell phones, are not only incorporating techniques and technologies originally developed for electroacoustic music, but they are generating their own tools and procedures that will eventually influence electroacoustic music repertoire. So this represents both an aesthetic and cultural change in the future. The question that remains is, are we as institutions following those changes? And I hope the answer is yes, and we have seen some change and some initiatives on this conference. But maybe I think those changes could be a little bit faster to catch what is going on in other fields that are not directly but closely related to electroacoustic music. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Fernando. So we've just had 4 opening statements. Had Meg been here, she would have been talking about a very profound interest in the development in a remixing culture, so that people are actually sharing different ways of making and remaking music. So it, in a sense, Edgar's is going like this. It kind of picks up where you left off, and I'm sure she would have cited your talk as one of the few that were contributing to this. And I do think that it's an aspect that forms part of this discussion. And now we have a great opportunity, but a great challenge, because we've gone through local, regional, national, and global dimensions, technological and strategic, and things to do with the dissemination of music, knowledge, and practices. The challenges that Fernando has listed, and my attempt to try to put a new frame on this idea. And of course, the key question that Lons asked, why? What is the motivation for the increased access? It's not just increasing access, but what it is that you intend to achieve and why you want to do this. That's a lot of areas, and we're a lot of people, and this can become complete anarchy at the moment. But I hope it's an anarchy that will lead us to some themes for future EMS conferences and some food for thought for the rest of our stay together.